when Mary came where Jesus was and saw him, she knelt at his feet and said to him, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. When Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who had come with her also weeping, he was greatly disturbed in spirit and deeply moved. He said, Where have you laid him? They said to him, Lord, come and see. Jesus began to weep. So the Jews said, See how he loved him. But some of them said, Could not he who opened the eyes of the blind man have kept this man from dying? Then Jesus, again greatly disturbed, came to the tomb. It was a cave, and a stone was lying against it. Jesus said, Take away the stone. Martha, the sister of the dead man, said to him, Lord, already there is a stench, because he has been dead 4 days. Jesus said to her, Did I not tell you that if you believed, you would see the glory of God? So they took away the stone. And Jesus looked upward and said, Father, I thank you for having heard me. I knew that you always hear me, but I have said this for the sake of the crowd standing here, so that they may believe that you sent me. When he had said this, he cried with a loud voice, Lazarus, come out. The dead man came out, his hands and feet bound with strips of cloth, and his face wrapped in a cloth. Jesus said to them, Unbind him and let him go. This is the gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, O Christ.
Be seated. This gospel's a really unusual choice for All Saints' Day. Jesus raising Lazarus from the dead. It's really a familiar gospel. I mean, we all know it. And the beauty of a familiar one, kind of heard on a different day, just when we think we've heard everything in that gospel. For me, kind of hearing it in a somewhat different context. I usually hear things I missed, and things I've missed all along when you just kind of know what's coming. And when I read the gospel this time in kind of preparing for this, I noticed a couple of things that I had previously missed about it. The first thing I noticed was it kind of emphasized Jesus came to Lazarus on the 4th day. And I always wondered about that. You know, I mean, Jesus and Lazarus were close friends. And I always wondered why, when Jesus received word that Lazarus was gravely ill and was dying, why didn't he drop everything and go? Why didn't he just run to him? I've never been able to understand why he waited so long. Now, he says he did that so that those might see that miracle and might believe. So, okay, that's the reason for that. But why so much emphasis on the 4th day? And I thought about that, and I thought, you know, throughout Scripture we're told, over and over, from the day of the resurrection, all through Scripture, God acts on the 3rd day. And now, here comes Jesus, about to perform this amazing miracle, the one that is finally going to do it, the one that is going to push him over the edge with all those religious leaders who so desperately want to kill him. He performs this amazing miracle on the 4th day, on the late day, on the hopeless day. So, what does that tell us? I think it tells us that God always hears us and God always acts, even if, to our minds, it's a day late. He tells us we'll never know how, when, or where he's going to act, but we always, always, always need to know that he will act in his own time, his own place, and his own way, not ours. And I think we have to remember that as we navigate our own, often very frightening and stress-filled worlds. God always acts, even when we think it's too late, even when we've lost hope. And the second thing I noticed, Martha had no problem whatsoever letting Jesus know how mad she was at him. You know, I get that. I mean, you call for him, and he shows up 4 days later, and she says, if you'd been here, my brother wouldn't have died. She's mad. And again, this passage, at first I thought, well, we read this at funerals. We don't read this for All Saints' Day. I suddenly realized it's the perfect passage for today, because this passage directly addresses the two emotions which seem to be constant for every single one of us throughout the ages: fear and anger. We're afraid. I mean, we just are. We're afraid for ourselves. We're afraid for those we love. We feel totally out of control. People let us down. Our bodies betray us. Circumstances of life overwhelm us. Pretty much the way I think Martha felt. And probably the way all those people around her felt as they watched Lazarus dying in what they felt was a needless way. And Martha lashes out. Where were you? Where were you, Jesus? The way, I think, if we're honest, we all feel from time to time. Where were you? Where were you, God? I was going through all this stuff. Where were you? But we learn two things from this passage. God always acts. Always, always, even if it's not when or how we think he should. And two, we frequently seem to lash out at those people we feel the most comfortable with. The ones who love us the best. The ones who we know aren't going to say, I'll never speak to you again. The ones who we know are going to forgive our outbursts. Martha loved Jesus so much and was so secure in his love for her that she wasn't afraid to get mad at him. She wasn't afraid to express her anger and her fear. And how did Jesus respond to this outburst? It's recorded in the shortest verse in the Bible. Jesus began to weep. Jesus wept. He wept because even though he was fully divine, he was also fully human. He too felt pain and sorrow and grief and fear and loneliness and anger and anxiety. He felt it all. He grieved as we all do. He grieved right there along with Martha and Mary and all the others. He grieved even knowing that in mere moments he is going to raise Lazarus from the dead. And that's exactly what we do. We grieve when those we love so dearly are taken from us, even when we know they too have been risen from the dead. The pain of loss causes us to grieve. But as we weep our tears of fear and anger and anxiety, let's remember, Jesus wept too. We're not alone. We can weep and we can cry to him and with him. something all those saints known throughout the ages. And another thing I thought about this time, I wonder how many times Jesus raises us from the dead. I mean, not physical death, but how many times does he raise us from emotional death? How many times does he raise us from a life that seems dead? That seems as if we're just going through the motions. A life that seems as if we're focused on the things that are going to slowly kill us, rather than the things that sustain us. A life focused on ourselves instead of on others. How many times has Jesus raised us from the dead and we never even noticed? How often do we do that? How often do we fail to recognize Christ right in our midst because we simply won't open our eyes? We remain so lost in our own thoughts, our own worries, and our own lives that we miss Jesus standing right in front of us. I like the author Nadia Bolz-Weber, and she's got a great book called Accidental Saints. It's a really fun book to read if you haven't. And so in her Accidental Saints book, she says, "It has been my experience that what makes us the saints of God is not our ability to be saintly, but rather God's ability to work through sinners. The title saint is always conferred. It's never earned. What we celebrate in the saints is not their piety, not their perfection, but the fact that we believe in a God who gets redemptive and holy things done in this world through, of all things, human beings. All of them are flawed." And that's been my experience. I keep making mistakes, including the same ones, over and over and over. I say no when I should say yes. I say yes when I should say no. I stumble into holy moments, and I don't even realize where I am until the moment's over. I think of myself and my own fears and my own worries way too often. I simply continue to be a flawed human being on whom God is still working very hard. And that's the power of Christianity, the power of unbounded mercy, the power that can't be killed by any human, no matter what they do, because in the end, there is Jesus. This God who slipped into human skin and loved us without bounds and forgave us without reservation and told us to go out there and do the same thing. This God, this love, this mercy, this grace can never, ever be destroyed by any human fault, any human failing, any human blunder. This God, this love, is what can shine through us, accidental saints though we may be. There's a great story about this little boy who, with his father, was sitting patiently through this really, really long All Saints' Day service. And it was one of those beautiful old churches that had beautiful stained glass windows and all the saints around them. And that was really the only thing that seemed to intrigue this poor little boy, were these stained glass windows. And the sunlight was pouring through the windows, and it was reflecting. And you know how it is on a sunny day with the stained glass, the colors all come in, And it was just covering the congregation with all these beautiful colors, the reds and the greens and the purples, and he's just mesmerized by these beautiful colors. And so after the service, the father asked the little boy, he said, "So, did you listen to the sermon?" And the little boy said, "Well, a little, kind of." So Dad says, "Well, then you can probably tell me about all the saints. Who are the saints?" "That's easy," the little boy said. "They're the people who the light shines through. The light goes right through them to what they love. And they don't get in the way because they're looking to you." That's what we're called to do. Reflect the light of Christ through us to the world. We're saints. We're saints not because of what we do, but because of what God does through us. The light reflects on us and through us, and we too are saints. Think about that. God brought us here to make a difference in this world, to make our world just a little bit better, to be a saint, to be one who lets the light shine through. We make mistakes, we get discouraged, we get frightened, we get lonely, we get sad, we're human. But it is not about us, it's about God. It's about turning everything over to God, turning everything over to the one who is shining through us. It's about living our lives in such a way that others look at us and see God reflected in us and through us. Of course, the drama in today's gospel is at the very end, when Jesus commands, "Unbind him, let him go." And that's what Jesus commands us as well. Unbind us. Unbind us to the bondage of our old life, doing everything just the way we've always done it, even when it doesn't work. Unbind us to the bondage of old arguments, old sins, old resentments, old envy, old bitterness, old pain, old anger, old fear, old grief. Unbind us and let us go. Don't let us stay all tangled up. Now's the time. Now's the time to let God's light and love shine through us. Accidental saints that God just flat loves too much to ever lose. Henry Nouwen gave us some really good guidelines, some really good questions to ask ourselves at the end of each day. Did I offer peace today? Did I bring a smile to someone's face? Did I say words of healing? Did I let go of anger and resentment? Did I forgive?